So good afternoon and welcome to this Flourish workshop. This afternoon we're going to be looking at how to sell your products and services online, and we have Debbie Tomkies with us. Debbie from Making Futures. And Debbie, I'll allow you to introduce yourself and say a bit about how to get started selling your products and services online. Over to you, Debbie.
Hi, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. Hopefully the slides in the chat will work, but I'm sure somebody will put a hand up or put something in the chat if not. So a little bit about me. So I'm Debbie Tomkies. I started out with a retail business, DT Craft and Design, back in 2005, and we set up our first web shop, online web shop back then. So internet and web has moved on a lot since then. So I'll share with you a little bit about our journey in terms of how the internet and shopping online has changed, but also just to give you some pointers as to what you might like to think about if you're thinking of setting up online, what sort of platforms are available to you, and what the options are, how easy or difficult the different options are, and any questions you've got, please don't hesitate to ask. Making Futures is our CIC company. That company exists to help support people who are setting up new businesses. We provide business mentoring, but we also provide community art therapy, and health and wellbeing through creative arts. My background is actually as a textile artist, but I also spent 15 years working in accountancy, so a little bit of a mix and match background, bit of commercial, bit of social enterprise, and a bit of art. Anyway, so that's probably enough about me. So let's get on with the talk today. And as I say, if you want to ask any questions, pop them in the chat or stick your hand up and unmute yourself and please ask away. So the first thing to think about when you are setting up a shop is how you advance your slides. Okay, I promise this was working about 5 minutes ago.
It's always the way. As an audience, I sometimes find the page up, page down doesn't work brilliantly on Zoom. It gets a bit stuck.
I think it is I'm trying to use the page up, page down, but it's not. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, it'll advance about 20 pages now. I can guarantee. Yeah, it is going to. It's just taking its time. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I've got the right one. I just need to be a little more patient. Okay, so when you're selling online, you've got a number of different options available to you, and there are probably more all the time. Some of them are quite obvious, some of them are perhaps ones you're not as familiar with. And there are various different reasons why you might sell on one or more of those different platforms. So the first one is a marketplace, and we'll come on to talk about what that is in a minute. The next one is an off-the-shelf shop, so an e-commerce type package. Then you've got your own website where you basically do most of the work yourself. And the last one, which is probably the newest of all of them, is selling via social media. So where you set up your shop from your Instagram, Facebook, or social media pages. So if we talk about online marketplaces first, because they're perhaps the most familiar, I assume you'll recognise some, if not all of those. If you don't recognise Amazon, I'd be super surprised. And eBay likewise. Does anyone already sell online out of interest? Yeah, Kelly. And okay, no, okay. So we can chat a bit about how you do that in a moment. So what you'll notice about those is when you sort of see those logos, if you like, for me, they give me an immediate kind of impression of what to expect and what I might buy there. I don't know how common my experience is, but certainly if I'm thinking about Amazon, it could be pretty much anything. Obviously, Amazon started off as a bookseller, but has moved on significantly since then. eBay, I mean, I still tend to think of it as somewhere where you would go to buy second-hand goods, but of course, probably isn't really. Oh, Una, yes, you are going to get copies of the slides. So yeah, don't worry about scribbling things down. As soon as people asked questions and participated and felt like they had to scribble, so that's fine. Yeah, so eBay, that's got, again, it's like a different kind of feel to it. Etsy, for those of you who might not be as familiar with it, is it started out as a craft platform for people who were making handmade goods, but it's increased and expanded over the years to incorporate all sorts of different things now, a lot more manufactured goods, or what we would consider manufactured goods, as well as products for making things. So for example, I sell dyes through DT Craft and Design, and I could sell my dyes on Etsy now, whereas I couldn't historically. Etsy is a global platform, so you can sell it anywhere in the world. Folksy is a similar setup to Etsy, but it's primarily UK based. So your customer base and you are more likely to be based in the UK. Can be more attractive to some people, because often when you're shopping on Etsy, if you ever do, quite often you'll find the products you like, only to find that it's in the States and the turnaround time is about 6 weeks and you need it for somebody's birthday tomorrow. Or at least that's my shopping profile. I don't know about anybody else. Okay. So I'm hoping that's going to move on now. It's doing really slow. So sorry. Feel free to unmute if you. I mean, what do you think about when you see these different platforms? What kind of immediately pops into your head? What do you professional, not professional, business, social?
To keep hold on to for the future. That was
I think for me, Etsy and Folksy used to feel quite kind of craft, but I think they've become pretty mainstream now, and you see lots of slightly more, interesting, less conventional products on there, but they feel very professionalized now. But that's just my perception.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that would be my perception. If I was going to buy something handmade, I probably wouldn't go to eBay, for example. Even though Etsy has become broader and Folksy is probably still the more handmade one. Likewise, I probably wouldn't go to eBay or Amazon, particularly for something handmade. But equally, I might not go to one of those, to Etsy or Folksy if I was looking to buy some books or whatever. So yeah, they each have their place, and it very much depends on what you're planning on selling, really. So some of the pros and cons of those type of marketplaces is that in the main, they're pretty well known. They're relatively simple to set up and get started. It's a low startup cost, so it's a low kind of entry. You don't have to have a lot of products. You don't need to have your own shopping cart or payment solution. You don't have to have a merchant account with a bank or whatever. And there's no long-term commitment. So you can basically dip your toe in the water without really committing a great deal of time or energy. On the flip side to that, there's a lot of competition. If you've ever been on a site like Etsy, it can be quite hard to make your product stand out in front of everyone else's. And there are whole courses on how to hack Etsy so that your products get to the top of the pile when somebody does a search, for example. Amazon obviously is just enormous, so again, getting your product available and viewable there can be quite tricky. The fees can get quite high. Without wishing to get into boring detail, the tax rules changed for marketplaces recently, and now Amazon, Etsy, and so on, all these marketplaces will collect tax in addition to the price of your goods. So, for example, if you sell an item that's £100 and your customer is in France, then the Etsy will take the £100. They'll charge the £100 plus the VAT on top. That's the VAT rate in France. So it can be, especially if you're a small company and you're not VAT registered in the UK, that can bump your prices up quite a bit, and it can get quite complicated. You've also got customer expectation perception. That can be a positive, it can be less positive depending on how your customers find you. And you can find that with some of the marketplaces, you're quite tied into them in terms of how much you can charge for postage, what the returns process is. I don't know if anybody's ever listed anything on Amazon, for example, but they have a very customer focused policy when it comes to returns or faulty goods, damaged goods, whatever. It's kind of a, refund first, ask questions later approach. So, and they can be quite brutal, in all honesty, in terms of shut down your shop. If somebody complains, they'll shut down your shop first and then, ask you to justify why you can reopen it later. So it can be, it can be a kind of difficult place to be sometimes. I'm just scrolling through the chat here. Oh, there you go. Okay, so I'm just catching up with some of the comments here. Yeah, and there's limited flexibility in terms of presentation and styling. So unlike perhaps where you might have your own shop, you're very much limited to the way in which the various platforms allow you to present. So for instance, if you wanted to put up photographs, you might be limited to the number that you can put up, or you might find that you have to pay if you want more than one photograph. You might have to pay for different colours of t-shirts in different sizes if you want pictures of each of those, for instance. But they can be useful, and they particularly can be useful when you first getting started. And of course, they do some of the advertising for you as well. So you're not necessarily starting from scratch in terms of being visible. Hoping that this is going to move on though.
Wow, it's inordinately slow today, isn't it?
It's mad, yeah. It's really, really slow. While it's doing that, I'm just going to have a quick look at the comments. Vinted doesn't have phone charges, but don't you have to pay to be a member of Vinted in order to buy on it? Isn't the sort of cost pushed on to the buyer?
Yeah, I've not used Vinted. I'm not sure.
My son's girlfriend uses it a lot.
I've not used it. I just see the advertisements and I keep hearing that no seller's charges. I'm thinking, oh, I'll get onto that in a minute.
Oh, yeah. So I wonder if the buyer just pays a little bit of a percentage.
Yeah, I'm sure you have to join it and you pay to join. But I don't know whether you pay then when you buy something as well. It's literally just the sort of membership fee, as it were.
There's a comment from John from Recycle IT. They're using eBay for change, and it means they don't have any listing fees. Well, that's a good thing to know about.
Oh, that's interesting. That's good to know. Oh, finally, it's moved on. So the next option that you might consider is an off-the-shelf store package. Easy for me to say. So some of these might be familiar to you. Some of them maybe not so much. It would be hard to ignore GoDaddy and Wix, given how high profile they are on their marketing, both on the telly and probably popping up in your Facebook feed on a regular basis if you have any sort of shopping element in your profile at all. Shopify is another one that you may well have heard of or had a look at. So these sort of packages are essentially I suppose you buy a shop almost. They are customizable, much more so than maybe eBay or Amazon or Etsy. So I'm still trying to get this to advance. And they are relatively quick to set up, certainly compared to setting up your own website. They have relatively low startup costs. They'll come with an integrated payment solution, so they'll have the shopping cart built in there, so you don't have to worry about creating a means to get the cash out of your customers. Most of them have a relatively short-term commitment. Depends on the platform that you go for. Some will let you cancel within a month. Some you'll pay less if, for example, you commit for a year. Obviously, then you can't cancel in between times. I think increasingly places like Wix and Shopify are extending the amount of customization that you can build in. You can extend the branding that you put on it and how you style it. But if you've got a very kind of specific brand look that you want, you may find that it can be quite frustrating because you can't kind of make the images and the pictures look exactly how you want them, for instance. And quite often you'll find that if you want your headers in H2 and you want your products in H3 and you want your list on the right and not on the left, often these things you find you end up having to pay separately for them to sort of customize for you. It's also worth checking the level of customer support. Best way to do that is probably through reviews online, because that'll give you a pretty good idea as to whether or not, if you've got an issue, whether there's 24/7 support, whether it's in person, whether you've just got kind of access to support forums or bots or whatever. And the fees do vary quite a lot, and it will very much depend on, you know, what you're selling, how often, how much, what the price of what you're selling is, and so on. The other thing that to be aware of when you're buying a package is that some of the bigger providers don't let you sort of move your shop wholesale to another shop, ironically, with the same domain name. So you might find that you lose your domain name if you want to move to a different provider. I can't remember which of the providers it is that does that, but somebody told me about it. We have our own website, so it doesn't really affect us, but it's just one to make sure that if you do sort of go for a platform and then you decide, actually, we don't really like this one, it's not suitable for us, make sure that you can move quite easily and that you don't lose your own brand, if you like, or have to create a new domain name for your business. Okay. So I just went very briefly onto the internet just to check a couple of pricing packages. I'm sorry, they are a little bit small. If you zoom your screen, you can probably just see, but the headline fees there, you can see this is a Wix website. So there's a difference between buying hosting for a website or buying a website package versus buying an e-commerce or a shop package. So you can see they start out quite low price there, £3.50 a month. That doesn't seem too unreasonable. Then you start scaling up a bit, and once you get to the top level, you're looking at £19 a month. So you're probably thinking, well, okay, I can probably manage with level 1 or 2, maybe going to the combo there, about £6.50 a month. But with Wix, that doesn't actually give you the shop package. That's just your website. So you then have to look at their e-commerce plan. And you can see there that the starting kind of entry level price for your e-commerce plan is now £13 a month. And for that, you may not get all the things that you need. I mean, you can see there, they talk about most people choose the business unlimited. So this is something that is definitely worth looking into, is to see, what do I need? What are my essentials? Can I scale it up and still be within budget? And, you know, what's the balance between what I have to have, what I'd like to have, and what I can afford, essentially. And also, how easy is it to do what I want to do? So this one is actually the GoDaddy site, even tinier. We'll get a copy of these slides, so don't worry if you can't actually read that. But the again, the sort of headline information there, as you can see, there's quite a big difference between what you get for your money and which package you might need if you want to set up even a relatively simple shop. You can usually work on the basis that the cheapest one will give you basic website, a domain name, and it might give you a very simple shop. By the time you want to start accepting payments, if you want to use their platforms, like taking PayPal or card payments or whatever, then you probably find that you're drifting into the next bracket up as a minimum. But having said that, they are easy to set up. So, you know, it's a balance. So the next one to look at is your own website. Now, with this one, obviously, what you have got is control. You've got a lot of different choices, and the amount of time and energy you need to put into them will vary depending on which one you go for. So Wix and GoDaddy offer just a website option only. Now, I don't know whether you can add on a different shop package to their offering or not, or whether you'd have to go with their own shop package. I suspect you'd probably have to use their shop package. Ionos and Bluehost are basically just hosting companies. So what you would do with them, and similarly WordPress, you would buy your domain name and they would effectively host your domain name on the web, and you can then build onto that whatever kind of website you want, whether that's a shop or a blog or simply a platform for you to showcase yourself as a business. WooCommerce is it's a sort of subset of WordPress. It's a shop. It is a shop package in its own right, usually used on a WordPress platform. So in terms of your own website, you do have much greater control. You can control the branding, the styling, the structure. There are umpteen different options out there, what they call themes, that allow you to style your website to look how you want it to look. So that will be anything from fonts, colors, layout, whether you want big pictures, small pictures, how you want it to look on a mobile, for example, or a tablet versus a computer. There's a lot of flexibility, so you can start very small. If, for example, in the beginning, you're not really selling anything yet, you just want your brand out there, so you just have like a homepage with a little bit about you and a bit about your brand and what you do. You could even put a coming soon page up there, so it'll just tell people to come back and look for your shop at some point in the future. There's a lot of scope to pull together all of your activities into one place. So, for example, I know a lot of us are kind of I don't know what the word is really. We talk about multi-craftual in the craft industry, but we often do lots of different things. So, for example, you might have a podcast, you might run a blog, you might sell products, you might sell services. Could be that you run events. But you might not want all of those things straight away. So you might want something, the website that you have might be something you want to be able to add to as and when you bring those new products or different services online, or when you want to start promoting different aspects of yourself and your business. So essentially your own website can kind of grow with you, and you can just add things as you need them, and keep your costs down. And it also allows you to really maximize your own brand without being kind of pigeonholed a bit into another company's website structure. The cons, what I would say is, do not underestimate the amount of time it takes to set up a really good website with a shop. Setting up a simple website is relatively quick. Setting up a shop, if you're using your own site, takes quite a bit longer. And it's really important that you think really carefully about what you want it to look like, what you want it to do, because some of those things can take quite a lot of time to. If you're quite internet savvy, it's not too bad, but if websites are new to you, then you may find that it's quite time consuming. Fees vary. Whatever website you choose, you'll have to pay for hosting. So you'll pay for your .co.uk or .com name or whatever. And just on that point, I imagine quite a lot of people already have websites anyway, but probably thinking at this point about adding a shop. But if you're not at the website stage yet, it's really worthwhile taking quite a bit of time to research your domain name, make sure you get the domain names you need. Sort of industry general advice is that you should always get the .com, because that's, if you like, the sort of top level, most familiar extension you can get onto your domain name. I tend to also get the .co.uk. And the reason for that is that I don't know about, I mean, my shopping profile is that I tend to buy in the UK if I can, because it's quicker and the postage is cheaper and so on. And I like to support UK businesses if possible. And quite often if I see a company and I'm just doing a quick Google search and want to buy something, if it says .co.uk, I'll generally assume that it's a UK company, so I can get the product quite quickly. Or if they're running an event, chances are that event is going to be in the UK and not in Florida or wherever. As lovely as I'm sure it would be to go to an event in Florida, it's probably not going to happen. So do check really carefully. You can't, when you buy a domain name, they'll always check before they give it to you anyway as to whether or not somebody else has got it, because obviously you can't have two companies with the same domain name. But once you've got it, it's surprisingly kind of difficult to change. Not from a practical point of view, you can change it really easily, but just from a point of view of people being able to find you on the internet. Things like search engines and search engine optimization. So when we go into Google and you're looking for, let's say you were looking for me at DT Crafts, if I had dtcrafts.co.uk as my web address, which I do, and I changed it to dccrafts.co.uk, all that time I'd spent investing in getting people to know where I am would be lost, because when you put the search in, it won't recognize me as DT Crafts. It thinks I'm a different company, and therefore you lose all that hard work you put into building your brand and building all the contacts that you have and all the search structure that you've put in place. So do spend a bit of time. Don't jump straight in with your web name and your shop name and so on. And also check your competition. Just sort of, I think I probably got time to share a really quick personal disaster story that happened to us. We obviously, our retail business is DT Crafts, and we couldn't understand why we were getting an awful lot of queries about MDF cutout plaques for various Disney characters and Frozen and Harry Potter and all the rest of it. And we were like, why are we getting all these inquiries? And it turned out that a company had set up in another part of the UK that sells exactly that. They were selling cutout MDF shapes, and they started off on eBay, and they'd moved on to the internet, and they bought the domain name DT_crafts, I think, or something very similar. So we were just getting an awful lot of their web hits because people were, picking the wrong company when they did the Google search. So just something to bear in mind is have a look what other domain names are out there where people might confuse you with someone else, or whether you're going to you're not going to get the traffic because it's going to go somewhere else. Other things about your own website, obviously, as I've said, that it's more complex. Again, customer support. I think whatever shop or platform you choose, customer support is really, really important. When I say customer support, I mean the support you get from your platform host. If you've got a problem, your website goes down, and you've got customers who can't place orders, then obviously you need to be able to get somebody on the phone or by email 24/7 to sort it out. I mean, we had our website go down about 11 at night, I think it was, when we were out somewhere in the middle of nowhere. We rang up the web company, they took down the existing site, put a backup from their own, because they take double backups, put the backup back on. I think it was only down for about a quarter of an hour in the end, but we were in the middle, we couldn't have possibly done anything about it because we were nowhere near a computer. So having that support there was really, really valuable. And sometimes it costs a bit more, but it's well worth it. The other thing is on fees. Check what comes as standard, check what you might have to pay for any extras. What can start out as quite a free sort of seeming platform, if you then have to keep adding little bits of extra things, the money can add up. And it does require some confidence. You know, as I say, setting up the basic website isn't too difficult. Setting up the shop is a more complex process. And also you need to spend some time building your audience as well. So, you know, if you've got your own website, basically you're on your own in terms of bringing people to your site. Whereas the sort of the marketplace platforms do have their own kind of marketing that will bring people to you. So be prepared to spend quite a bit of time on social media and the like, pushing people towards your own, your business, your services or goods or whatever it is. So the third one is the social media platforms. As I say, these are sort of relatively new, but you can simply sort of tack on, if you like, and connect your shop to Facebook, Instagram, I think Pinterest, not sure which of the other, TikTok, you can do it on TikTok now, I think. So essentially, if for example, I was selling one of my skeins of yarn and I put a post up on social media, I can put a thing underneath. You've probably seen it when you've been on social media yourselves, and it just says shop now, or it might say buy me, or it might say go to shop. You go over to the shop, buy the item, and it's in your basket, and you've made a sale. Relatively quick, I think, to set up. I haven't taken advantage of this, I'll be honest. I've looked at it and never quite got around to it. Feedback is a little bit mixed from people that I worked with, in as much as well, I think it's fine if you've got a small number of products, but I don't know if it works so well for services. And people do say that they, if you've got a full e-commerce shop and you add on an Instagram or a Facebook shop, but there's not always a very good interface between them in terms of how they update and how they deal with things like stock levels and that kind of thing. But they are quite good. I mean, they're, in terms of just trying them out and seeing how they work, you know, they are pretty good. The other thing to think about there again is about sort of customer perception. I don't know if do people ever people bought from the kind of seen it in your profile, Facebook feed. I tend to see them more on Instagram than Facebook, I think.
I've bought the odd thing.
Yeah.
And, I've got to say my experience has very much been that the sell is better than the quality. It's kind of put me off. You know, whereas I think if you go on something like Etsy, they're pretty good quality. Some of these have just been kind of, yeah, they look better than they are when they show up. It's disappointing.
Yeah, I think it can be. And you'll see a lot, you certainly in some cases see a lot of the same product, but it appears to be a different company. If you're on social media more than perhaps, if I'm on social media more than I should be.
No, I've definitely seen that, and you have a look, and yeah, they just seem to have different names. And sometimes I have a look and see if the website actually exists, and sometimes it doesn't. So the .com website that gets promoted on social, you go and look it up on Google, it's not there.
I have can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Tika.
Yeah. Hi. So this is Tika. I have an experience as well, but not mine per se. My son bought something on TikTok. So when because the thing had come down to about, I don't know how much he bought it. It was headphones. We thought he was not going to get the stuff, but they came 2 weeks after. So yeah, there are some genuine sellers out there, even like on things like TikTok. And it seems that many people are using these social media platforms to sell their products and services, especially for, I think for small businesses, it gives you that leverage without renting a building for you to put your service and product, so you can do it at home and grow your business inch by inch.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it certainly does. I'm not sure how it would work with events and services. I think you would still have to have, well, you could list it, you can list events on Facebook, can't you? So I think you have to have a separate place to, you'd have to have a separate place to take the ticket fees. So you'd probably have to use Eventbrite or
Yeah, I think
something
that's
along
right.
those lines.
Yeah. There's a message here from Fiona saying, I tried to sell my upholstery stall on Facebook Shop and it was taken down because they didn't think it was appropriate. I've heard of other upholsterers having the same problem, and the Facebook help has been a nightmare to navigate. I've had that with a similar thing, but having Facebook adverts taken down, and yeah, the help has been an absolute nightmare, even though you're paying, you know, a fee to list your products, to advertise something, and they absolutely were no help whatsoever. So that really warned me off using Facebook to sell stuff.
Yeah, we've done both.
Sorry. I was saying I had a similar experience with Facebook. I advertised a few things from my page and they took the advertisements down, didn't refund the money that had been paid on the advertisements. And the amount of messages that go back and forth, it ends up like you're wasting your time. You're literally putting more time and wasting more money doing that.
Yeah, exactly. I've had exactly that experience. So frustrating.
And it's really hard to get to the bottom of why they won't allow the advert. I mean, I've had situations where I've put up the same advert and then one time they'll allow it and another time they won't. And they'll just say, oh, it's inappropriate. And you will, I'm selling yarn. What can be particularly inappropriate about yarn? And it's really hard, really, really hard.
But I find that the Facebook Marketplace, obviously slightly different to a Facebook shop. They seem to have separated it into Facebook for business now, don't they? And Marketplace is just for selling, odd bits and bobs, and that's been absolutely fine. It's almost anything goes on that, whereas they've got some sort of moderation on the business side of things where you just can't find out what you're supposed to have done wrong.
No, I agree. I was going to just say, is Instagram any better? I don't use Instagram Shop, so I'm not sure. But aren't they owned by the same? Doesn't Facebook or whatever it's called in Meta, does it not own Instagram?
It does, yeah. They changed some of the policies on the shop the other day. Whereas one of my shops on Facebook had said it was inappropriate, and then Instagram had allowed it, but the page on Facebook, what was on that page was less than what's on my supplier's page. It was just really ridiculous. And then Instagram kept saying, open your shop, put your items in your shop. But Facebook had blocked me from putting items in the shop. So it was just, yeah. It's kind of crazy the way it works, because then you put it up and then it says it's going for review, and then you don't hear back, and it's the same people that are actually dealing with the two shops. So I just left it alone. I just use it for advertising now.
Yeah, I think I struggle with the kind of whole needing control over things. So even though things take me longer, I tend to like to know where it is and know that it's, I'm the one who decides what it looks like, how much it costs, where it goes, etc., etc. But it's hard to ignore these platforms because they're so big and they can get you to an audience that would take you a long time to reach, organically by yourself. I suppose, and they are, I mean, Facebook ads, I suppose, on the plus side are quite, you can be quite flexible on how much you spend, and you can have quite a bit of control over your budget. you just have to be careful that you keep an eye on it and make sure, I think as well, making sure that you're getting good value for money. I mean, analytics isn't really part of the conversation today as such, but analytics are a really important part of the shop. You know, you evaluating the performance of your shop, and also in part where you put your shop, because, you know, if you know, for example, that if you've got 10,000 Instagram followers and 100 people like your Facebook page, well, you know, there's not much point spending a lot of time advertising on your Facebook page. You're better off putting it through Instagram. You know, if your customers find you through Twitter, then, you know, you want to put all your marketing through Twitter. If you know that, I mean, if you're a hand maker, for example, then you're probably more likely to get better sales on Etsy or Folksy, because that's where people tend to go for those handmade items. And even though they do exist on other platforms, you know, probably the breadth of choice is better on some of the marketplaces, you know, where they specialize. I mean, that's my perception. I'm not sure about anyone else.
Something some people find useful to do is just to test out different channels and just see which ones stick with, because sometimes there's an audience in a slightly unexpected place, isn't there? And you just trial, you know, the really big marketplaces, you have a larger audience, but you've got, like you say, Debbie, the question of a lot more competition. So sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error, see what sticks.
Yeah, definitely. And so you do need to, again, well, so when you're looking at I don't know how much analytics you can get out of Etsy, eBay, and so on, in terms of, you know, how many people have looked at your product, how many people, having looked at it, bought it. You can get an idea from how many sales you've made, but you know who's looking, you know, what age are they, where are they from, you know, is it mostly, you know, what's the sort of gender profile of the people who buy from you, and depending on which platform you're on, there's more of that information available. Certainly if you have your own website, it's quite scary sometimes how much information you can get about people's shopping habits, you know, how long they spend on your site, which pages they go to and from, where they join your page, where they leave your page. So you can get a feel for, you know, which pages are kind of attracting people and which pages putting people off, for instance, or, you know, are they struggling to get out of your checkout or whatever. I mean, these are probably a little bit more advanced than, you know, when you first set up your site, but it's one of those sort of things where they are quite advanced, but if you come at them late on, you might find that you're already sort of 3/4 of the way down the line, and it's more difficult to dig yourself out than if you kind of give it some thought at the beginning. And what you sell is definitely important as well. So if you're selling, you know, you could be selling tickets to an event, you might be selling services, so people booking you for events and what have you. You might be selling accountancy services. You might also be selling, obviously, you might be selling goods. You might be selling customized goods. And each of those things comes with its own requirements, really. And some platforms are better than others for those sorts of things. So, I mean, you know, say Facebook, you can list your events. So if you've got a good following on Facebook, you might find that putting your events on there is enough to sell your tickets. And if you use something like Eventbrite for your ticket sales, then Eventbrite itself also does some marketing for you. So it gives you some added visibility for attracting customers. Where it gets more tricky is if you're doing all of those things. Or if you're selling downloads, for example, you need to think about, you know, making sure that whatever platform you choose will allow you to sell downloads. Or it might be that you're selling online courses. You know, so all these things, it's really sort of start with, if you like, start with what will I be selling? and then think about where are my customers, where do I think my customers might be, how are they likely to buy from me. You know, those are the sorts of things that you might want to think about. My screen's gone on the go slow again. So we talked there about, I think we've probably covered most of that. So obviously then you've got to think about, well, great, how do you decide? You know, how do I sort of wade my way through the various different options? And I think there are a number of things to consider. The first one is, how IT savvy are you? And you might as well be totally honest with yourself. You know, if you struggle to set up your Facebook profile, you don't want necessarily to be designing your own website from scratch, because you will spend a lot of time on it. And how much time do you have? You know, if you only sell 10 products at this point in time, you probably don't need a full-on, you know, web shop. You might be able to do quite nicely with some of the smaller, with a, you know, a smaller profile, if you like, on Instagram or a Facebook shop or something like that, until you grow. And as I said before, you know, what is it you want to sell? Make sure whatever platform you choose can cover not just the things you sell now, but the things you might want to sell going forward. And I think linked into the time factor and the how much internet, how, you know, how IT literate you are, is how much control do you want. When I designed our first website, I would say I was on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of web designing. I was probably about a -1. Which makes you question why I would have done it in the first place and why I didn't just buy an off the peg shop. But I'm also very, very strong on control. So I was prepared to invest that amount of time and really learn, so that the shop looked how I wanted it to right from day one. But that might not be realistic, and you do have to be realistic. You know, if you haven't got that time and you're busy developing your business elsewhere, and it's not going to be a big part of what you do, it's not going to be the main thing that drives visitors to buy from you, then, you know, go for something that's a bit more kind of a bit less intensive. Let's say, what platforms do you already use? If you've got a following somewhere, those people already like you. You know, those people already kind of have come to you and follow you, like you, whatever. They share your posts, so they're more likely to be your customers already. So when you've got new products, then, you know, they're likely to buy. You know, so that's always a good place to start. Accepting payment as well, especially when you're starting up, it can be easier to use a platform where they provide the payment services for you. Particularly if you are a new business and you may not have built up a long credit history, you know, it may be more difficult to get some of the kind of mainstream payment platforms to take you on. I think now it's much more flexible than it was perhaps when we started, but it's certainly, it used to be quite rigorous, I think it's fair to say. Oh, what's the name of my shop? My screen's really tiny here. I'll try and write this. So that's actually my shop. And if you notice as well, the CIC, which is you'll notice these two websites are very different. I designed both of them, but they do very different things and they have a very different profile. Oh, thanks for thanks for putting that up, Shelley. I just about to come back to that one.
Oh, no, I thought I wouldn't interrupt your flow.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But yeah, we use Eventbrite for all our events, and it's fantastic for any events, workshops, anything like that. I don't know if you use it, Debbie.
It's an interesting question. We've only just restarted doing our events through DT Crafts. We run online workshops through Making Futures, and we've been doing that for a long time. That's entirely done in-house. We don't use Eventbrite for that. I'm looking at Eventbrite at the moment for some of the sort of what I call make and take workshops, so things like embroidery workshops and stuff. But I have got we've got a sort of in-house booking system for that at the moment, but I'm wondering whether or not Eventbrite might be an option to tack on for some events. So we're gonna kind of do a parallel test to see whether the publicity you get from Eventbrite outweighs the cost, because it's certainly more expensive. If I'm right, if you advertise an event for free, there's no charge, is there, from Eventbrite?
That's right. Yeah, it's free if it's free, and it's a percentage otherwise. But I guess it depends if you think you want to be reaching to a wider audience. If you're going to existing users, then you can use your own, because it seems daft to be charging paying the Eventbrite fee if you're going to your existing customer base. But for reaching out to a wider audience, it's great because it's got location, it's got tagging, so you can choose up to 10 tags. So people searching for kind of similar things in your area will get notified. And it's also fantastic if people are, really loyal customers, they can follow you. So they get notified about everything that you put on, and it's doing your marketing for you in that way. So that's a useful function as well.
Yeah, and it is quite straightforward to set up your events on Eventbrite as well. I know one of the things that they do suggest at the moment is when you set your course fee, for example, is adding their fee onto the course fee. I only noticed because I was getting some really peculiar amounts. When normally a course would be £40, suddenly it was £53.16 or something, and apparently it's because people add in the Eventbrite fee to the cost. I'm not sure how beneficial or otherwise that is.
So I think there's an option on Eventbrite you can either you can check a box which says pass on the cost to the customer, so it splits it out. So you can either decide your headline fee and absorb the cost that way, or you tick the box and say pass the cost on. So yeah, it's up to you how you present it.
Yeah. The one thing that did put me off Eventbrite was their reviews for customer service for people who buy tickets. It's absolutely dire. I mean, really, really dire. But having said that, we book our yoga tickets with Eventbrite with our yoga teacher and don't have any problems. And as with reviews generally, I don't, some of them were, oh, we couldn't get a refund. Well, vast majority of events, if you need a refund, you have to go direct to the organizer anyway. Or they'll say, oh, we went to this event and it was rubbish. Well, that's not Eventbrite's problem.
Yeah, exactly.
You give a negative review to Eventbrite, but actually it might be the organizer's issue, not theirs.
Absolutely. And again, that's something you set up when you list your event. You decide whether you're offering refunds and at what point you're offering them up to. So you could offer them 24 hours in advance, a week in advance. It's really up to you how you set that. So that's, again, possibly not Eventbrite's issue, but the organizer will have set those terms.
Yeah. So what I've done is so this looks like a very, very complicated chart, but it's not as complicated as it looks. And as I say, take your time to kind of peruse it at your leisure if you wish. But all I've done is I've kind of tried to go through the various different things that you might want to think about and just sort of give what's my view anyway of what kind of priority they have. So if you're going on the marketplace, the IT skills you need will be low. if you're going on your website, for example, and designing from scratch, then your IT skills need to be higher. And similarly, time investment, marketplace low, social media low, but again, your own website is going to be much higher. And you can just work your way through those basically, and hopefully that will be a bit of a starting point just for you to jump off and say, right, well, you know, highlight the ones that resonate for you and see which one, hopefully one of them will come out as being your best option. In all likelihood, they'll all be like equally spread and you still have to make a decision, but you know, hopefully they're at least a starting point for you. And again, these are just some further things to think about. Things like adding blogs and podcasts and so on. I mean, there's nothing to stop you having a website and a separate profiles on things like Eventbrite and social media. And I know obviously Flourish has a website and you also use Eventbrite, and you know there's all kinds of things on the Flourish website. So there's nothing to stop you having both. And having your products on different websites, on different platforms. I mean, we're just about to put some products onto Etsy, for example, again, just to test whether or not it's a platform where people would look for us.
And there's also advantages, this SEO advantages, in having lots of links to and from your sites. It tells Google that you're connected. So although it might feel really neat and tidy having everything in one place, finding different ways to link to other people and for different people to link to you will help push you up the search engine rankings as well.
Yeah, search engine rankings is an absolute science in its own right, and it's a dark art, I think it's fair to say. In fact, I wouldn't even call it a science, I'd call it more of a dark art, because even people who specialise in it don't really seem to fully kind of understand. I want to say understand sounds rude, but like it changes a lot, and Google and the like are quite
they're completely secretive about it. So
oh, absolutely, yeah, you know, they won't tell you what makes you rank highly. They'll give some rough ideas, and just trial and error will give you some rough ideas as well. But there are some really good analytics within Google that you can do. And another thing is that you can try are you can look at keywords. So what sort of words you know are relevant to your business. So for example, if it was trainers, you can see where you are. So if somebody did a search for trainers UK, for instance, you can see which page on Google your product would actually appear. And that's quite powerful actually. When we did this on our website, we were quite disappointed where we ranked for certain products that we thought we would rank really highly for. And so what that tells you is, well, you know, we need to do a bit more work on these pages. We're either not putting enough information there, Google doesn't consider them to be important or relevant, or that our customers would find them useful. So you can spend a bit of time, I mean, you can actually disappear down a bit of a rabbit hole if you're not careful, but it's certainly worth spending a little bit of time once you get to that stage on just checking whether the products or the services that you really want to be known for, people will actually find you. You know, I mean, I don't know if anyone else is as sad as me and occasionally Googles themselves, but you can certainly try that and see how much information there is about you out there, and also, you know, how good a profile your business has got out there in the marketplace. And it sounds a bit narcissistic, but it's certainly something worth doing. And yeah, updating. One of the things that Google is quite keen on is dynamic sites. So they do look for a site that's been regularly updated. And I think that's really frustrating because, I mean, Shelley, you probably, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but it's frustrating when you've got, you know, pages that literally don't need updating because they don't really tell you anything, you know, new. But sometimes you find yourself having to go in and change them around a bit just so that Google kind of recognises that they're up to date and being refreshed.
Yeah, so I think a lot, one of the approaches people use is you have your static pages, which is the content that doesn't need updating. So your about page, your home page, you know, the things that don't often need changing. And then you have some sort of blog page, which is your news or your events, and you just update those, and that's enough for Google to, you know, see that your content's fresh and being updated. So that's the benefit of having those kind of, you know, blogs, events, and news regularly featured on your website somewhere.
And again, that comes, but there's an element there as well of when you're choosing your platform is, you know, how important is that to you? Do you think that you'll get enough traffic through Etsy, through its marketing, and through the fact that there are just millions and millions of people who visit it? Or do you feel that you've got something that, you know, you want to have a bit more input into? And it's hard, I think, when you first start your own website, or if you start a website that's not on one of the kind of publicized platforms like Amazon and so on. There is a lot of work involved, you know, in building your reputation and building your business.
It'd be really interesting to hear, Debbie, when you've done your tests. That would be a really interesting future session to look at exactly how you went about testing things, how you set up the tests and the results as well. Because I think that process is a really useful one, and for people who might not have a background in looking at, say, analytics or you know, A/B testing, to see how you do that from the kind of grassroots level would be really useful.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to do that. I mean, it might prompt me to actually do it.
Yeah, you have to do it now.
These things are all things that are kind of, you know, they're on your to-do list that don't always make it to the top.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is reviews as well, because reviews can be both positive and negative, in the sense not just of what people post about you, but you know, if you've ever looked at an Amazon review of any product whatsoever, you know, there are, you know, anywhere from best product in the world to worst product in the world, you know, and that's something to think about in terms of your, you know, how that fits your business. For example, I know people who sell on Etsy who only post 2 days a week because the rest of the time they're actually making the products that they sell. And even though they put that quite clearly in their listings, we'll still get, you know, negative feedback from people who say, well, I ordered this item at midnight on Tuesday and it hadn't arrived by 9 a.m. on Wednesday, you know, and there's an enormously high kind of expectation level with the sort of what I suppose I call the Amazon generation, and we're all guilty of it, I think, of being, you know, expecting to get a product really, really fast. And if your business isn't geared up that way, you know, that can prove to be something of a negative, no matter how clear you are in your, you know, in your descriptions and your, you know, your profile. That's not to say you know, you shouldn't strive for getting products out quickly, of course, but if it's not appropriate, especially if you're sending out customized goods, of course, you know, it can't be the next day in the main, you know, but it's just about being realistic about that sort of thing.
And like you say, just being incredibly clear. And I've seen some people use it as a selling point as well, you know, to really highlight, you know, this is a handcrafted product, or this is something that we'll be doing, you know, ordering on request for environmental reasons, or whatever it is, but positioning it as this is a benefit. You know, the reason it's slow is this, which is part of the reason you're buying into this.
Yeah. I think the way to sort of approach this as well, depending on your kind of how your brain works, I guess, is, you know, by all means use these 2 grids as a starting point to get you thinking about, you know, what you want and what you can do. And I think there's often the two may not be the same. You know, and you have to be really super honest with yourself, and you also have to be very conscious of, you know, budget versus time versus skills. If you're lucky, you might want to think about bartering with someone else. So if you know someone who's an absolute genius at web design and likes handmade socks, you could, you know, use that as a kind of selling point to say, right, okay, well, I'll make you have some handmade socks if you'll design my website. So it's not necessarily about you doing everything. So I don't know if it's flicking. You know, it's also about thinking about a bit sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Thinking outside the box in terms of how you might get that work done for you. If you decide that, yes, I desperately need my own website, but no, I haven't got the time and resources to do it. One thing to think about in that context is if you do go down the route of employing a web designer, is thinking about forward looking. You'll hear horror stories about web designers who design your website and then disappear off into the sunset, and you never see them again, and you need to update something and you can't change it because for whatever reason they've not put in the access for you to do those changes, or you simply don't understand how they put in place what they did. So if you are using web designer, it's worth making clear to them, or being clear about what the kind of future support level is, and are you going to have to pay them again, you know, every time you pick up the phone or send them an email. Again, not strictly sort of related to shops as such, but just something that is quite important. You know, even if it's down to you, you would expect that when a web designer hands you back your website, you should be able to, for example, change product prices, add new products, remove products from stock, update stock if that's what you sell, or, you know, change the description of your event, set up a new event. And they should spend some time hopefully explaining that to you so that you've got a working website to take forward. So I think the other thing that's important is, and we sort of touched on this right at the beginning, which is, you know, what do you want the shop to say about you? What do you want it to say about your business? How do you want people to see you? And I've just given some examples there. Obviously, in this context, where, you know, we're very heavily kind of focused on social purpose. So it's worth thinking about, you know, when I go to this site, does it give me that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling of someone who wants to pay it forward, wants to give, you know, wants to kind of contribute to the community? Or is it just a company that wants to extract as much profit as it possibly can, and drive around in a £50,000 Ferrari or whatever? Actually, Ferraris are probably a lot more expensive than that, but anyway. So, and this will also feed into what your website will look like in terms of its sort of how you lay it out and so on. I think I've probably got a couple of examples here. If you're buying an off-the-shelf shop, for example, often they'll have specific shops for different business types. So restaurants might have things that are specifically useful for restaurants. So they'll have an easy way to create a menu, for example. They'll have an option to add Deliveroo or Just Eat or whatever. If you're a photographer, they'll have portfolio type style shops where, you know, there's a heavy emphasis on photography, and there's lots of scope for you to do lots of things with imagery and galleries and all that kind of thing. If your interest is more in selling your services, then you might want something that, for instance, I think I might, let's see if I've got one. So the one on the left there, and well, those two are probably more photography based. Apologies for the for the dog who's just come back in from his walk. These are you can see they're very sort of very heavily image led, you know, and they speak to kind of a photographer, a videographer, that sort of thing. we do sort of make almost subconscious judgments about what a company is about simply by looking at their website. You know, if I was to say, you know, what do you think that, well, if there wasn't a subject matter there, if I said to you, well, what does the company on the left do versus what does the company on the right do? You know, which one's more focused on the environment, which one's more likely to be focused on well-being, which one's the one you're more likely to go to if you want your web designing. I think you can straight away see that there are real differences to think about with your setup and your design. Fonts. I mean, again, you could go on forever about fonts and what fonts should look like, how many you should have on a page, etc. But if I was to sort of say, well, what do you think, for example, shop number 9 might sell? What would you think compared to, say, shop number 1? You know, for me, shop number 9 is probably something a bit arty. They might sell paint materials, or they might sell artwork, or they could be a photographer. A tattoo parlor, yes. Absolutely, it could definitely be a tattoo parlor. Shop 7, probably similar. If I looked at shop 6, I might think, oh, that's kind of a vintagey 60s vibe going on there. You know, maybe that's a vintage clothes shop or something like that. So, you know, again, just things to bear in mind.
Debbie, do we want to give people a quick comfort break at some point, and when would be convenient to do so?
Yeah, sure. To be honest, I don't think this was only scheduled to be an hour. So,
Okay.
but if people want to have a quick break, that's absolutely fine. I don't know that I've got that many more slides to do, to be perfectly honest. If I could actually get the slides to work, I could tell you.
Well, sometimes the questions are always good at the end. So should we take just a few minutes now? Oh no, actually, you are onto your final slide. So unless anyone's desperate to take a break, should we carry on?
I mean, I'm happy to sort of to carry on if people are all right with that. And I'm quite happy to do questions as well afterwards, or you can, you know, I'll put my email address at the end if you want to ask me some questions.
Fantastic. Let's do that. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So I think whatever you decide to do with your shop, it may well be, and in many cases, it will be the first contact your customer has with you, with your business, with your ethos, with your brand. It's your shop window. You know, it tells people about you, and it's worth, however sort of simple or complicated it might be, you know, really you kind of, it's worth spending time on, just from a perspective of making sure that you're giving the right impression and that you're attracting the right people. You know, you want to sort of make sure that it represents you, you know, and it sells you to the best possible advantage. If you're a company that, you know, has an incredibly kind of strong social purpose and gives back to the community, and, you know, if you're a non-profit or you're a CIO, whatever, then you want to make that clear. You know, a lot of people will make buying choices based on your ethos. Packaging, for example, in your environmental statement should be somewhere on your website if you're selling product and you're sending it in the post. You know, most websites, if you notice now, somewhere down in the bottom will have a modern slavery statement, for example. I mean, obviously you'd assume that no non-profit, well, for that matter, no company is going to have is going to want to say that it is involved in modern slavery, but these things, people do look at these things. So don't ignore your footers, don't ignore the little bits at the bottom, and also make sure you get your terms and conditions right as well. If you sell products, that's really important, because you want to make it clear, what do I do if I don't like the product? How long have I got to return it? What if it's faulty? What are my rights as a customer? What are your rights as a business? And the clearer that is, the less difficulty you'll have if you have to turn around to a customer and say, well, no, you bought this lipstick 6 months ago and you've used half of it, and no, I'm sorry, you can't return it. If you want to avoid a bad review, then the best thing is to have that in your terms and conditions. So yeah, don't ignore the boring bits, I suppose. And yeah, listen to feedback. Apart from anything, if you've got a mailing list or anything like that, it's going to kind of contact people. Say to people, oh, I've just launched my new website, I'd really like to know what you think. I'll give a 10% discount coupon to, for every response, or something along those lines. Or it might be, you might get a little freebie in your order if you fill in a Google poll or something like that. And trying to be sort of as inclusive as you can. Nothing makes me happier, bizarrely, than a customer messaging me and saying, oh, I've just had a look at your website and I think this page is broken. Because how on earth would you know? Really, really hard when you get a bigger website to keep on top of every single page, and it shows your customers are checking, and it shows that they care enough to tell you. And what more could you ask than a customer who actually gives, cares enough about your business to let you know that there's something wrong. And it will also, it will make a difference to whether they recommend you. But be true to yourself. Don't necessarily be, there are some rules out there about, you shouldn't have more than X number of pictures or X number of fonts or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's your shop. And if that speaks to you and that kind of represents you and your business, be true to yourself. I mean, don't be afraid to try it and change it if you have to, but represent your business and what you really stand for. Web designers and the people who write marketing books aren't really aimed at social entrepreneurs in the main. So their sort of direction is a bit different, and that's okay. Okay, well, that kind of concludes really for me. Is there anything anybody would like to ask, or I'm presuming, Shelley, we could actually, if people have got websites, they could share them if they felt inclined, and we could.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to share them in the text, and Debbie, you could always feedback or.
I'm not about to criticise anybody's website.
No, positively.
It's anybody's concern.
It's good to see what people are doing and what's working for people.
Oh, absolutely.
They found things to set up, because some things are dead straightforward and others are a bit clunkier.
Yeah, and if anybody's got any kind of questions about, what things that I've raised so far, or things that they might want to, want some feedback on from anyone, to be honest, anyone in the chat, that would be absolutely fine.
So Naomi's posted her finding Naya website. Naomi, what do you use? Have you got your own website? Do you use any commerce plugins?
I do, yeah. I've actually got 3 websites. I've only put 2 of them up there. They're both they're each with different e-commerce people. Finding Naya is, that one's through I'll get back to that one in a minute. Elizabeth Hamilton. Oh, that's not right. I didn't write that one right. Elizabeth Hamilton author. That one is done by Square and Weebly. That's the one that I'm probably having the most interaction at the moment with the selling side, because I sell a lot of products via that. My books go through that site. And even if I sell them face to face, there's like a little, there's a thing on the Square app where I can put in that I've taken cash for the product. So it still takes it off my inventory, and I've put in that I've taken the cash for that product as well. So
that's useful.
Finding the easiest to use at the moment.
And what's that called? Square?
That's Square, and it's Square by Weebly.
And that's different to Squarespace then?
Yeah, and I think it's different to Squarespace because when it comes up, Square actually governs me doing my website and any sort of alterations I do on my website or additions. And then Weebly handles the money side of things, I think it is. That's how it goes. So, yeah. But that because it confused me at first, like having two different logins. But then I realized that it's because of the fact that it's an e-commerce site, etc. And that's what it is. That's got it doing that.
Yeah.
But I'm finding that one so easy to navigate. Finding Naya, I think that one was the one that was done on. I'll tell you exactly which one that one's done on. Right now, bear with me one moment. I think. Yeah. Bear with me one moment. I'll tell you who that one's through. That one's a little bit harder for me to adjust and navigate. It's a little bit harder for me to update. And with that one, what I'm finding is that in order to add a shop or even sell items, I have to purchase another section from the people that own that one.
Right.
So
like that's stuck together.
Yeah, and I had the same thing with Wix as well. And that's what my other site is, which is a lingerie site. And then with Wix, you have to keep on buying extra things, obviously, to add it on and to make it a bit better. But I also found that creating the site, excellent, brilliant.
Yeah, I've heard good things about setting up Wix.
Yeah, setting it up, creating it, updating it is all excellent. It's just a matter of their restrictions and stuff like that. And they don't sort of give you a full list of the things that they will allow and won't allow beforehand. So you go on it and then you sign up and you say you're not going to sell anything that's of danger to anybody, blah, 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 etc. That's my lingerie site. So there's certain lingerie items that I can't put up there, and it doesn't make any sort of sense to me. Right,
that's a bit of a headache, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's back with that. But yeah, Wix is good for a startup site, most definitely. The Finding Naya site is with bear with me, it's with Ionos, yeah, Ionos. So it's IONOS. I'll write that in the chat.
And thank you.
I'm really loving the web pages on that, and because it's a charity, Ionos said that they had special sites for that. So and onto them, and it really does work well. They've even got like a counter and stuff like that, to say how many families you're helping, etc., like things like that.
That's good. Yeah, and that's a really good tip. If you are a not-for-profit, if you're a CIC or or have charitable status, it's worth searching up which platforms offer more, because quite a few of them unlock premium content. So they'll give you the premium content for free if you're a non-profit. Yeah. So before you start, have a look and see if you're eligible for any of those. Kelly, you've posted that you've got a website already up and running. You finally added a shop in the last couple of months, and it's been hard work, but worth it. Oh, that's good to hear. I realised taking myself out of the equation is good, as I keep offering discounts and spending too long taking customers' details. Yeah, absolutely. It can really, once you're up and running in terms of shortcutting the ordering process, that's a massive advantage. What do you use, Kelly?
I've got WordPress.
And what with WooCommerce plugged in?
Yes.
Yeah,
I had WordPress too. Well, my friend's husband works in IT, so he said years ago, have a WordPress one. But again, like you said, I just had a page for years and years and years. And then I have a Facebook. Well, actually, not years and years and years. That's a bit much. But I had everything was through Facebook, really. And then I got an Etsy shop, but then slowly trying to move away from Etsy because of all the fees and all that and stuff.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then have my own shop. So, but now I'm paying for it, like I'm paying for all the hosting and stuff. So just trying to really make it work for me. So that's why I came on the thing today. Because again, you just then, like you say, when you were talking about the cost earlier, once you've got the cost of that, it's motivated me to put more work into it, but it's knowing where to put the work, really.
Yeah, where to focus.
Optimize it. And when you're wasting your time and when you invest in your time, it's a hard thing to work out, really, but I'm getting there.
Oh, it sounds as if it's working for you. And did you set up the WordPress website yourself?
No, I bought like a template off a lady. Again,
Yeah.
that was about 3 or 4 years ago. But again, I didn't have the time. It was a bit silly. It's something you want to have what everyone else has got, don't like. You want a website, but I just never had the time to invest. I'm doing it all the way backwards now. Now both my girls are at school. I've got time to work on it and stuff. But
yeah, I think that's I think with WordPress, because I've had websites on WordPress before, and I think getting someone to do the initial setup can be really, really helpful, because they can design it and just make it work and look very slick and beautiful very quickly. But a few £100, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of money.
But once you show me, it's like because like Etsy is dead easy, because that's like a template, isn't it, at the end of the day? So I do think for anybody that's a really good introduction, because you just, once you put your photo on, you can do most of it on your phone as well. Like when you've got a kid, you can anything you do on your phone while in the park, so all put a photo on there, because you take the photo on your phone. So that's always been dead good for me.
Excellent.
But, that was a good, but as soon as somebody told me on WordPress I can do this, I forgot what it's called now. You sort of just do it in the design, you don't see the back end, because when you see the back end, you're like, God knows what any of that means.
The WYSIWYG editor.
Yeah,
so WYSIWYG, it's what you see is what you get. So it means you just literally type into each field, and it means you don't have to have any developing skills in order to update it, which is brilliant. So that's the minute
I found that, it was a game changer. It's always like Etsy, I can do this, I can change it.
You can just change the title, change the field.
And then all your buttons, you can just put links in the bit on the side where the button takes you, and it was just like a game changer. I was like, oh, thank God. the fog's cleared, I know what I'm doing, I can do some. But like she said earlier about, it's scary to have your own website. If someone had developed it for you and then you didn't know how to put new products on it, or if you're going to put your prices up and you can't do it. So I'm glad I did it the way it made me feel better this whole session. It took me a long time, but I feel like I have done it the right way. Just it had to grow really slowly with me and stuff. So
I think it's often the way. Oh,
and you can do, I mean, all my websites are WordPress, and you can do a huge amount for nothing. No cost, doesn't it? Just
I know when people say about plugins, but they still scare me. I was like, oh no. Someone have to tell me, is it safe to put that plug in? I don't know what that's going to do to my site. But I'm getting over it, and like the updates is a new thing again. I paid someone to do some updates because I haven't done any updates for about 3 years, and just thought, is the whole site going to crash? God knows what. But you've got to keep updated. I mean, so I've got into it now. Just pressing the button in and hoping for the best. I think
that's a really good tip, just to keep everything updated. But with plugins, just make sure you go, if you're starting out and you're not particularly tech confident, just go for the official WordPress ones. There's loads out there, and then you're safe.
And the support network is amazing on WordPress. I mean, like you can literally put something out there and somebody will send you a bit of code. Literally go in your site and like say, oh, put this bit of like code into this page on your website, and suddenly
I'll get there soon, hopefully. But I see that it comes like that when you log in on your site, it has updates and all these like local WordPress groups. I was like, oh gosh. But I did think
WordPress groups amazing.
Right, that's probably what I need to get into next. But
and the official support's good as well. So if you log a ticket, if you've got a problem with the site and you log a ticket with WordPress, they are pretty responsive actually.
Because I kind of think, because you're not really paying them anything, I didn't know there was any sort of support for anything.
There is. Well, if you've got a paid for theme, which doesn't have to be very expensive, so I think we might have paid 150, 200 pounds for Avada, which is very a theme which has got loads of functionality. Then you can access WordPress support.
Okay.
So we've just got a couple of questions in the chat here. Could you advise a package or tips for ensuring photos are good quality or correct size online?
I can recommend Canva. You can resize anything. The only thing it's not brilliant at is getting the pictures more in detail. If you go on Fiverr, you can get someone that will re-image your photo and make it a more precise image for you. That happening, and then go out to Canva. You can size it to whatever size you want. You can put your own specifications in there and resize it. One thing that I wanted to mention about the Square site, that I was saying that it's really easy, the Elizabeth Hamilton author site, I put up the right link in there now. Since the Russia and Ukraine episode, you're not able to access it from Internet Explorer. It falls in line with these sanctions and everything that was going on. So you have to go through Google or through another search engine. Internet Explorer is the only one that's not working since then. So so I was like panicking and them like, my site's not there. Where's my site? Blah blah blah.
I mean, on that, Internet Explorer is often not supported by all sorts of different companies. So it's
Yeah.
Go for Chrome or one of the other, Firefox or one of the other ones, if you're having problems with Internet Explorer. And just going back to the photos, so for picture size, you know, for a bog standard image, sort of 600 by 400 pixels is a good one to go for. And you can batch resize. If you look up, there's lots of batch resizing programs, so you can get all your pictures and make them the same size and the right size. And I think the key thing on your website to make it look nice is that they're consistent, so you haven't got pictures, you know, jumping all over the place. So some of them you will have to crop by hand. And then if you've got any kind of full screen images, you'll need to make them bigger, probably like 1200 pixels wide or something. But it's good to look at what works and then just make everything consistent across your site. But it sometimes is a bit of hand resizing if you've got funny shapes.
Is it to do with like, so pixels as opposed to being square and not rectangle? Is it because it's file size and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, you can have square images, absolutely. A lot of the, you know, because, well, it depends on if you're looking at desktop or mobile. So because traditionally desktop suits landscape images, a lot of websites have landscape images. But then the moment you look at that on a portrait on a phone, then it changes. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with having square images. I mean, aesthetically, some people think kind of a 3:2 dimension is the one that's most pleasing on the eye. But lots of squares can look nice as well. And again, if you're looking at something like WordPress, they've got the brilliant functionality where you can look at your pages on, and loads of the other platforms have this, but you can look at your page on desktop, so it looks like this, on a tablet, and then on a mobile, and you can see exactly how it renders, and it will, you know, be responsive for you. So it knows what device somebody's looking at your website on, and it renders it to make it more attractive. So that's useful too. Got another question. Hello, I started a business of Portuguese marzipan sweets about a month ago, and now I'm building my online store on Wix. That's Annabella. How are you finding Wix, Annabella?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, my English. I'm better writing.
Oh, not at all.
Sorry. I'm Portuguese. I'm in England about 8 months, and then joined with my partner. And then I starting a business about marzipan sweets, the Portuguese ones. About is from the south of Portugal. And right now we just have the Facebook and Instagram page to orders. And now I'm building the website with Wix.
How are
I'm
you finding it? Is it good to use?
Yeah, it's nice. I build one, but I don't like the template. And then I want to build another one to see some details, different details. And yeah, I'm photographer, and then I take the pictures, and then it's nice to do. It's have too much tutorials and YouTube videos to explain the settings and the things to do. It's nice to work with Wix. I'm happy to.
Oh, that's good. And they sound delicious. Thanks for posting the Facebook page. We can all have a look at that. They sound amazing. A message from Debbie about the non-profit package on Canva. That's really useful, isn't it, Debbie?
Yeah, definitely. I was really pleased when I found that.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're a CIC or if you've got charitable status, you can get access to the premium package, which has just got loads more images and a bit more functionality, and you can have more team members on there as well. The basic package is great, the free Canva package, for all sorts of things. And we've actually got a Canva workshop tomorrow if anyone's interested. You can just sign up on our Eventbrite page. See, it all comes full circle. Has anyone got any more questions for Debbie before we wind up? No, I think that's great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Debbie. That was really, really useful, and it just gives us a bit of a flavour of the vast array of different platforms and options we've got when it comes to selling our stuff online. So thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks to everyone for